Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Ukraine This Week with me, Don Arleth. This week saw devastating attacks on energy infrastructure of Ukraine, delivering a particular blow to the capital, Kyiv. The situation was so bad that tens of thousands were left without power, heat, and running and hot water. President Zelensky even instituted a state of emergency in the energy sector to help expedite repairs and reduce energy consumption. This week also marked some political turmoil in the Ukrainian parliament, marking a change of wind for President Zelensky, who has enjoyed a consolidation of power in the presidential office and normally relied on his party to greenlight his decisions in the Verkhovna Rada. When trying to get the seal of approval to appoint former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal as energy minister, the measure failed in a first vote. Adding to this, the Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine raided the offices of opposition MP and also former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, accusing her of vote buying and accusations she denies. We'll break down these developments with our guests, but first let's take a look at the report from Ukraine this week. Ukraine declares a state of emergency in its energy sector amid unrelenting Russian airstrikes and freezing cold temperatures. Ukrainians have no doubt it's the most difficult winter of the war. The system has been crippled. Electricity supply is limited to just a few hours daily.
There is no heating at all. Because of the outages, it's very cold.
Those who are younger and able-bodied have found ways to cope with the situation.
I usually go to a cafe, it's warm there. At home, I use a hot water bottle, for example. We dress warmly and use blankets.
But for the most vulnerable, the situation is critical.
Older people, children, people with disabilities, and those with chronic illnesses face the greatest risk.
Hypothermia is one of the concerns we have for the newborns. Right now, we are seeing that it is becoming quickly life-threatening element in terms of absence of warmth and medical care.
Russia says it's only targeting military facilities, while Ukrainians say these attacks are meant to break the spirit of everyday Ukrainians and bomb them into submission in the dark, freezing cities.
We never have heard anyone saying, let's give in to Russia. And this is something pretty amazing because everybody understands why this is happening to us, who the enemy is. And our goal right now is to spend energy on what we can and is to help each other.
Ukraine is also looking for solutions abroad.
I have ordered an increase of electricity import capacities using all available business connections.
Amid the severe crisis, former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal has taken over the Energy Ministry, an institution hobbled by corruption allegations and failure to prepare for Russian attacks on infrastructure.
His key task is to deal with the emergency situation in the energy sector caused by Russian strikes and severe winter weather.
After falling short in the first vote, Shmyhal's candidacy was ultimately approved by the Ukrainian parliament in a second vote. First time around, the Verkhovna Rada shocked President Zelensky by rejecting his pick. An alleged corruption scheme reportedly manipulated the vote. Ukraine's anti-corruption authorities have charged opposition member and former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko with allegedly offering bribes to lawmakers in exchange for parliamentary votes. Tymoshenko denies the allegations, calling them politically motivated after investigators searched the offices belonging to her party. And now, joining us to discuss the energy situation in Ukraine is Oleksiy Povolotsky, head of the recovery office at DTEK, Ukraine's largest energy company. Oleksiy, hello, and thank you so much for joining us on Ukraine This Week.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, now, can you tell us about the current state of energy infrastructure in the capital and, of course, also the worst affected regions?
Yeah, the situation is quite critical. We are in the fourth years of the war, and every year Russians, they're changing their tactics. Maybe because they are not very efficient on the battlefield, they decided to hit us by hitting our energy sector. and they were successful in some cases, and they hit our generation enterprises, transmission enterprises, and distribution. And these days we have quite difficult situation in several regions. People staying in their apartments without electricity for many hours. And also what is also important is that this year we have probably the hardest winter in the last 10 years. We have frosts in the night up to -20, and this is hardens the situation.
Yeah, absolutely very difficult situations. Well, you're hearing that the power is slowly returning to some districts of the capital. There are rolling blackouts. When do you expect the situation to return to normal in Kyiv?
Yeah, we as energy company, we do our best. We recover our generation facilities. Also, we recover our distribution enterprises, power lines, power stations as soon as we can. Our workers work 24/7, and I think that they're heroes. After our military who protect us on the battlefield, energy workers and the energy sector is the second front. And our engineers, our workers, they do their job every day, 24/7, despite snowing, despite heavy frosts. And indeed, we do our best. Nobody can predict how fast you can recover, and a lot depends on the availability of the equipment. We have many pieces of equipment damaged literally every day, and we try to find out equipment. We buy equipment ourselves. We obtain a lot of pieces of equipment from the donors, and this is really helpful. Without this help, it would be much difficult for us to recover.
Indeed. Now, as the biggest private energy company in Ukraine, can you tell us how much of DTEK's facilities are damaged and destroyed?
We run 5 TPPs, thermal power stations, which are on the control territory. All of them were hit many times. Mm-hmm. And several stations do not work at this moment of time due to recent attacks. And we try to recover what is possible in order to have electricity, have supply electricity to our people, to our apartments, to our businesses. At the same time, a lot of power lines of our TSO operator, Ukrenergo, and many regional distribution systems, regional grids are hit. And we as energy company and other energy companies, we do our best, believe us, and we do our best to recover and to return electricity supply to our customers.
Do you have any statistics on how many people have been affected by the strikes on the thermal power plants? And how many people are literally left in the cold?
These days, all regions of Ukraine have electricity supply outages. So this is, I would say, all Ukraine. So millions of people deprived from electricity, from water supply, from heating. And as I said, we have minus temperatures like -20. So situation is quite critical. And of course, we have regions which are in the central part of the country, on the eastern part of the country, and the south, which have the biggest problems at this moment of time. We have import of electricity. We try to distribute and transmit this electricity from the west to the east. Again, we do our best.
Ukraine always manages to repair its grid thanks to the heroes of that work at your company, as you just mentioned, that are out there repairing these, power lines, substations, what have you. But we've seen this, as you also pointed out, accumulating over years now. How much more such attacks can the energy grid, can these thermal power plants theoretically take before the system is completely collapsed?
Unfortunately, every new single attack have huge influence on the system. Unfortunately, all previous attacks and new attacks, they multiply in the effect. The system is resilient and centralized, and we have lots of backup plans and facilities. At the same time, it is quite difficult to continue the same level as we had before the war. And of course, we call our partners and allies to protect us from from the air. Air defense systems must be strengthened. We need more ammunition to hit missiles and the drones in the air. This is much cheaper and much faster than then after the missiles are successful, missile attacks are successful, repair for months, even maybe years, thermal power plants and other facilities.
I absolutely agree, and these are complex systems that cost a lot of money, and I would imagine sourcing parts and transformers and things of that nature can be difficult, not only under war, but also you have to probably get a lot of this stuff abroad. Can you give us a picture of the procurement process and the bottlenecks involved in fixing the electric network there in Ukraine?
Damage is huge. This is the main problem, and we thanks to all our donors and partners for their help. At the same time, the need of Ukraine during the war is much bigger than donors can allocate at this moment of time. And our government and we usually often every day we work with the donors, explaining them our situation, explaining their bottlenecks and asking for help. And the difficulty is the financing. The second difficulty, as you rightly mentioned, the lead time, the production time, the logistics to Ukraine, and new attacks. New attacks, we have them every day, and we hear in the news that the new attacks is preparing by Russians. So we will see, but again, we will stay strong. We do our best, and nobody will let us down. And I hope that this winter will come to the end soon, and with your help as our friends and partners, definitely we will win.
Yeah, Ukraine's resilience has been absolutely exemplary and very surprising for many onlookers abroad. Now, how much has Ukraine had to increase purchases of electricity from its main partners in this field, namely Slovakia and Hungary, due to these Russian attacks?
Yeah, we see the statistics that from December, the import of electricity has grown. We use our interconnection capacities, interconnection lines a lot, and we import as much electricity as we need and as much electricity as we can transmit within Ukraine. Definitely, due to the big frosts, we have to import more. Again, sometimes it is difficult to transmit electricity across the country, and this is one of the difficulties that we have at this moment of the time. But again, this channel is very important for us, and thanks for all our partners in the European Union who help us with the electricity supply and transmission.
Final question. We're almost out of time, so I need you to be brief. But when people get their power returned to their homes and they don't have central heat, does that put a further strain on the grid?
Of course. When you have like plus 10 or even below temperatures in your apartment, in your houses, what do you do when the electricity is on? You, of course, put the heaters on. And this has huge impact on the system.
Okay, Alexei Povolotsky, the head of the recovery office at DTEK, thank you so much for joining us on Ukraine This Week. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now joining us to discuss the political developments of the week is Yevgenia Kravchuk, Ukrainian MP and Deputy Chair of the Ukrainian Parliament Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy. Yevgenia, so great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, now, Parliament seems to have been slipping away from the president as the war drags on. This week we saw not enough members of the ruling party show up to appoint Denis Shmyhal as Minister of Energy. So what happened there?
I don't think it's really news because both Denis Shmyhal and Minister of Defense, new Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov, who was first Prime Minister and Minister of Digitalization, were appointed the very next day. So I think it was just bad timing because of a big break due to the the process we need to do and the documents to be sent officially to the Parliament. So both ministers work now, and actually former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal is his background lies actually in energy sector. He was quite time ago a director of one of the power plants on the western part of Ukraine. So we do hope that his experience will help in these not very bright moments. I'm experiencing the same hardships as Ukrainians. I'm right now in Kiev in my apartment, pretty cold because we didn't have electricity for now 10 hours in a row. Hopefully in a few hours we'll get some so we could recharge the batteries, at least heat the apartment, and but we will go on and live, and thanks God only 6 months before the spring.
So starting Monday you expect the situation to become back to normal, more or less?
We totally depend on first the weather, and the weather looks like it's going to be frosty. So right now I think it's minus 18 and minus 17 in Kiev, and it looks like it's going to be in weeks. And we haven't had such a cold weather since I think 1995. And at the same time, Russians are planning new attacks. So right now in the Black Sea, they have 3 carriers of Kalibrs missiles. And obviously they want to cause the humanitarian catastrophe, especially in Kiev. In Kiev lives at least 3.6 million people. So it's a big city, big megapolis. And most of the people, they do not have, they are dependent on the central heating, not living in the individual houses. So hopefully the news that we had in the morning that Ukraine got a new package of the air defense will also help, because we see that the percentage of intercepted missiles during the last attacks was lower. That's because Ukraine was running out of the missiles for the air defense.
Right. Now, President Zelensky has called for a state of emergency in the energy sector. How is this going to change the situation there? How will this help the energy companies, I guess, fix the damage quicker?
Well, I think it's more for the better convenience of the customers, of the people. So right now it's obligatory to, for example, in a city, when you run business, to use less electricity for your outer advertisement. So even the lights on the streets are being used less, which is really difficult because we have a very cold weather. It's dark. It's quite slippery. We need to have this economy of the lights, so people who use the electricity in the apartments can use it more. And of course, it's also the creation or establishing of these different places. It could be a supermarket, it could be a railroad station, or other the place with common access, so people would come and recharge the phone, drink hot tea, but also it's for better cooperation between the regions, and probably understanding where we could use and transport some electricity from one region to another. Because, for example, the left bank of the Dnipro River, so the left part of Ukraine, is much now under bigger pressure with the deficit of electricity, and Kiev, of course, because it's a big city.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'd like to return to other developments this week. We saw Yulia Tymoshenko has been in politics for 30 years or so. We saw her office raided by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. She's suspected of corruption and buying votes in the parliament to block the appointment of Shmyhal, presumably. They found $40,000 in her office. Is this the end of her political career, or do you think she'll master the system as she always has?
Well, it's a difficult question for me as the member of the parliament, the same member of the parliament as she is. But if you ask me as the political advisor that I worked before I became member of parliament, I would say, it depends, because Yulia Tymoshenko is very creative in communication, and now she's actually trying to use this situation, saying that, it's something political, which is not, because National Anti-Corruption Bureau is the totally independent agency. We saw them raiding, for example, Yermak's office, the former chair of President Zelensky office, or the case was the ministers. So basically, they are independent. They do their investigations, and obviously, if they have this case and they can prove it, and we see that it will go sooner or later into the court for decision. That's the court to decide whether this the materials Nabu collected has enough of evidence to prove the guilt. But I can totally say it, confirm that the monomajority is under pressure. So there are some actors and political actors that would like to break this monomajority. And having less operational, but I'm pretty sure the parliament will still united on very important issues, especially the war, the support of the army, European integration. That's something that has to unite, and that's for the people to decide whether they want to elect this or that politician. I'm not even saying names. It's the decision of people.
Do you feel that there's going to be a little bit more political maneuvering within the parliament? We know that President Zelensky isn't going to stand for re-election. We have these corruption scandals. Presumably, the Servant of the People Party is going to potentially disappear when those elections come. So I guess looking forward, do you see the wheelings and dealings in the parliament somewhat changing right now?
First of all, I cannot confirm that President Zelensky said that he's not running. I never saw these statements from, the recent time. And actually, President Zelensky is not thinking about the elections right now. He's thinking about how to finish, how to end the war, how to get the security guarantees for Ukraine, how to make sure that Ukraine stands and survives this very cold, harsh winter. And, me either, when we are under such circumstances, it's really difficult to imagine the electoral campaigns and so on and so forth. So I think first things first, we need to finish the war, and of course afterwards there'll be the political, political life, elections, competition. Ukrainian people love to elect new parties. They love to to change the heroes, to have new people coming in. Probably a lot of veterans will try to come in, and for good reason, to be part of the parliament, to have the party. So we have to at least now ensure that Ukraine stays as a strong sovereign state, being part of the European Union, and that's what I worry most, is the capability of the vote. And I hope we will vote all these important legislation for European integration. And I'm part of the negotiation team, doing a lot for European integration, and a lot of my colleagues as well. So I think that's something that has to unite the parliament. And it's been a longer term than it should be. It will be 7 years in 2026, our term. But we cannot get tired.
Well, Yevgenia Kravchuk, Ukrainian MP and Deputy Chair of the Ukrainian Parliament Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy, thank you so much for joining us on Ukraine This Week. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all the time we have on Ukraine This Week. Join us again next week for all the latest from the war in Ukraine. If you ever miss an episode, you can find it on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye.